Sometimes when I sit down and I think about the reality that has become Nigeria, I begin to ask myself, in the space of 100 years, that's even too much. In the space from the so-called independence we told ourselves we've got up until now, what has really changed? What has the government done to see to it that things get to be better? What have we done wrong and what have we done right? And we might want to criticize colonialism for all the wrongs it did. We might want to criticize the slave trade for all we think that particular situation was. But that was not the first time slavery was being practiced. We practiced slavery, though on a low scale. We had businessmen come from Europe, come from across the Atlantic and a couple of other places, and we saw what they did. Vasco da Gama had traveled all the way from where he did and then up onto the gates of India by ocean. Joseph Conrad had sailed down to Congo, and a whole lot of stuff had gone down that particular line. Joseph Conrad saw to the publication of the barbaric novel Heart of Darkness, which actually gets to portray to a great extent his own heart of darkness. But what am I trying to say in all of this rambling? In all of what I've been trying to ramble here is the fact that our sons and daughters have also sold us in recent times, as well as aiding the so-called white man in enslaving his own people to the mass and the large scale we've come to see as what we now term colonialism and neo-colonialism. And until we begin to ask ourselves the real deep questions, we're not going to get any answer anytime soon. What are the questions we're not asking ourselves that we should ask ourselves? We should be asking ourselves questions the like of what went wrong? How stupid have we become in the face of adversity, in the face of confusion, in the face of all this? How stupid have we become to the extent of letting our own brothers and sisters in the so-called 21st century to suffer the way they suffer? Why I say this is for very obvious and very complicated yet very simple reasons. Take a look at Africa in recent times. Africa on the news, Africa on TikTok and the likes of that, and the pictures that have been taken about Africa over the years. Africa, to a large extent, by most persons across the continent, have been known for a place of catastrophe, a place in need of aid, a place in need of help. I'm not exaggerating what I'm saying. On my trips to the Netherlands, you get to see pictures of Africans in front of churches, by the notice boards of churches, in parish houses, and in rectories, and in toilets, by NGOs in shops, asking for help, asking for aid, as though the African cannot do what he has to do by himself, as though the African is too lazy to get to really figure out his life. The African is not lazy. He's just been shut off opportunities, and he's just been limited to a great deal. That's why I like what Passenger said in his song. He said, you can only buy what you are sold, and you can only keep what you find. The average African, has found very, very few opportunities in the changing fortunes of time. The leaders have failed. Our leaders have gone below the benchmark of what ordinarily should be. That is why sometimes I begin to ask myself, the fights, the hustles, the bustles, the pain, the sacrifices of the likes of Amir Cabral, the sacrifice of Kenneth Kaunda, the sacrifices of people like Nelson Mandela, the sacrifices of even Mahatma Gandhi in his time in South Africa, the sacrifices of those we now call founding fathers, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, where are they? Because these persons struggled in the last, it's not up to 80 years, most of them were down here with us, and now they are no longer here. And our politicians have not helped matters. Our politicians have gone south. Our politicians have been so stupid. Our politicians have been so lazy. We have a lack of thinking tank amongst those we get to put in power. We have the dead of a people, and the few journalists who get to try to speak up and stand up to government officials are attacked, terrorists are attacked, a whole lot of things. The likes of David Hundenyi, the likes of different people out there trying to see to it that they get to do what they get to do, attack the bad guys. Meanwhile, the guys who don't mean any well to us attack the guys that ordinarily should be given the attention they should be given. The president, just like Kamala Harris, didn't say anything during his campaign. He kept on running away from the media, just like Kamala is running away. And by no way am I comparing Trump and P2B, but we had P2B always wanting to use the media and come to the media to get to talk. Same thing Trump is doing at every given opportunity. But the president currently then said, Amy Lokan. And what does that mean? He said, it is my turn. Nobody asked him, what turn is that? He just said, it is my turn. Amy Lokan, and that's what he kept on saying. The whole idea of the town hall different from Bala Blue, Bulaba. These are all the things the president said in his campaign. These things are meaningless. They don't have any meaning. That is why sometimes trying to hold him accountable becomes a problem. And I also have this problem of thinking that those who actually voted for somebody that came with conviction, that came with a whole lot of charisma and came with a whole lot of conviction, with a list of track record, a track record that even up till now, in the face of evidence, the likes of Reno Mokri is still denying that someone like Peter Obi was indeed a president we needed in the country. Amongst all of them, I'm by no chance getting to say that probably, I don't want to even put Peter Obi amongst the level where we talk about the lesser evil. Peter Obi was the good guy amongst the guys out there. But what did we do as a people? The few who voted for him, or the majority who voted for him, but their votes got rigged. They lost it, and up until now, such a people are made to suffer alongside those who actually voted for the current president in the country, Tinubu. It's a sad reality. And to think of the fact that after a year in office, the president is still here to grab his hands around the fact that he, as a president, has really, really lived beneath the tenets of what a president ordinarily should be. The president of Nigeria doubles as the minister for petroleum, as well as the president at the same time. And it speaks the devil to see to it that Nigeria, being an oil-producing country, still doesn't have a functional refinery. And for whatever idea of monopoly we're talking about, we have to give Dangote his flowers to a great extent. That he is trying to set up a refinery in the country. He has dabbled into a whole lot of stuff. He has dabbled into sugar. He has dabbled into salt. He has dabbled into spaghetti. He has dabbled into a whole lot of merchandise out there, from cements and all that. And he's saying, we can build a refinery. And he's doing that. But from what we've discovered in recent times, the government have tried, or people within the governing levels of the country have tried to see to it that they stifle his effort. I'm not saying Dangote's refinery is going to solve the problem of the country, but I'm saying to a large extent it doesn't make sense that a country like Nigeria, producing crude for itself, still gets to send its raw product out of the country for it to be refined, and then whatsoever the refiners or the blenders get to decide to send back home is what we have. As I make this record, as we sit down here talking, people are suffering from fuel scarcity. In 2014, I was still a very, very young man. Shifted back a bit in 2012, I was even way younger, as the statistics, as reality also will get to point out. Fuel was below 100 naira. When I was a teenager, fuel was sold within the first 100 naira. Fast forward up until now, when the so-called APC government took over power, what have we seen? We have seen fuel move from 100 naira to up to 1,200 naira in a space of less than a decade. These are the same people who came out protesting in 2012, around that time up until 2014, that the current president wasn't really doing what he was supposed to do, and that the current sitting president said something. He said the then president don't know what to do with power. And I begin to ask myself, what does he really want to do with power? How strong does he really think he is? And how strong are the people of Nigeria, the people who have failed to look at where power really resides? If you watch the Game of Thrones, you get to see that particular conversation in one of the episodes where it was said that power resides where the people think power resides.
Power is a curious thing, my lord. Are you fond of riddles?
Why? Am I about to hear one?
3 great men sit in a room, a king, a priest, and a rich man. Between them stands a common sellsword. Each great man bids the sellsword kill the other 2. Who lives, who dies?
Depends on the sellsword.
Does it? He has neither crown nor gold, nor favor with the gods.
He has a sword, the power of life and death.
But if it's swordsmen who rule, why do we pretend kings hold all the power? When Ned Stark lost his head, who was truly responsible? Joffrey, the executioner, or something else?
I've decided I don't like riddles.
Power resides where men believe it resides. It's a trick, a shadow on the wall. And a very small man can cast a very large shadow.
And indeed, that is the truth. People are suffering. People don't have running water. There are no functional ambulance in that country. I can tell you the average, not even the average Nigerian, the so-called wealthy Nigerian don't fall sick and get rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. When the owner of Ray Power FM died, my grandfather was in that particular hospital, receiving treatment in a private hospital. And when he was rushed to the hospital, he wasn't brought in an ambulance. He was declared dead. Only God knows how long it took them to locate that hospital, because that was around the same time doctors were on strike. And they were on strike for reasons you want to say justifiable, but at the same time against the oath of what they swore, because, they also have to survive, right? They also have to eat. They also have to take care of their family. And these are things the government have not really been able to sit down to think about. And I also come back to my grandfather. I keep on saying it, and I'll continue to hold the Nigerian government accountable for this particular reason and this particular fact. My grandfather served Nigeria. My grandfather worked within the health sector. My granddad worked, seeing to it that the National Health Insurance Scheme got to a stage where it can really be said that we have an insurance scheme that people can benefit from. And when it was time for him to die, or when it was time for him indeed actually to be kept alive, he died at 73. He didn't die an old man. And in Nigeria, dying at 73 is considered very, very old. The life expectancy for an average Nigerian man is in the 40s. If you live up to 53, you have really lived very, very long. And he died at 73. And I know what it took us to get a hospital for him in the Federal Capital Territory when it mattered the most. From going to Garki to the National Hospital in the Federal Capital Territory to as many hospitals we could look for a space to keep an old man who just needed basic care. We couldn't see. He ended up at home for months receiving home treatments down there. Not to talk about how expensive treatments in these hospitals actually are, even in the so-called National Hospital, and the nonchalant attitude get to be portrayed down there by staff and you name it. This is the Federal Capital Territory I'm talking about. Have you looked at Baffin? I know Baffin at the tip of my fingers. Baffin doesn't have a hospital. There's no hospital in Baffin. There's no hospital in Douala. There's no hospital in this. There are no hospitals in these places. You want to talk about schools, primary, secondary schools? There are no schools. Even the children of the rich cannot even go to basic schools. They get to be admitted in schools either funded by some foreign investors and the likes of that, bearing a Nigerian name. Do you know how schools have become expensive in Nigeria? You want to talk about running water? You want to talk about running water? It's not funny. You want to talk about roads that have killed people more than they have seen to people going to their destinations. You want to talk about hospitals that have killed people than treat people. Do you want to talk about the number of maternal mortality and infant mortality we get to experience in Nigeria? Is it because they are not recorded? You want to talk about the number of accidents in our roads and the level of inferior roads we get to construct and build? You want to talk about the dilapidating structures we have in our educational sector? You want to talk about the infrastructures that are dead? I still have, though they expired now. The same way I do when I travel around the world, I have library cards in different cities I get to visit. Even when I was back home. You want to talk about the library in Calabar? I don't know the current situation of it, but that library was horrible. The shields, the window shields were all gone. Rain used to gush into the building. The books were as old as you can imagine. They were not taken care of. Libraries are gone. You want to talk about how our children are admitted in universities across the country and still yet have to pay to bribe lecturers to see to it that they get to pass. You want to talk about how stupid and how hypocritical our educational system has been. So to the extent that unique students in certain faculties this year, 2024, are currently on suspension for gyrating and trying to celebrate on the day of their sign out, on the day of their last paper and exams. And you want to tell me that you are training people in the Nigerian universities so that they get to have rational minds and the likes of that? You want to talk about the number of doctors that get to leave the country every day? You want to talk about how courses such as geology, such as physiology, such as philosophy, such as lab technology and the likes of these are losing its value back home? You want to talk how forestry is being plundered and trees are being felled on a daily basis? You want to talk about the brown envelopes that get to exchange hands into the civil service? You want to talk about the over-bloated civil service and the number of people not even needed down there that get to stay there? You want to talk about the policies that are so against the people that you don't even have investments stay or last for 2-3 years without soiling your hands? Do you want to talk about the idea of fuel? You want to talk about the deadening of the Nigerian spirit? At one point, are Nigerians going to break? I don't think Nigerians are ready to break. Whatsoever is lacking, I think the benevolent spirit that guides the universe, if there is any, has bestowed upon Nigerians the gift of patience. Dear leaders in the country, Nigerians are really, really patient. Not just Nigerians alone, Africa by extension. A patience or if a kind of virtue we have that I don't really like as a person, because this is a virtue that 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 makes us think, we can endure a little bit. The Nigerian is not asking for too much. He just wants water to run in his kitchen. He just wants hot water when he needs hot water. He just wants cold water when he needs cold water. He just wants leaders to be leaders and for them to be followers, and they just want peace. They just want to gyrate and have some old one bed. They just want to live in peace and in security and in the things they want to live. But that's not what they get back home. Do you want us to talk about Boko Haram? Or you want us to talk about the so-called unknown God men down the east? Do you want to talk about the kidnaps that go on in a place like Benue State, the place that was supposed to be the food basket of the nation? Do you want to talk about the security insurgencies that go on up north and what terrorism has done to that part of the world? Do you want to tell me, you guys in government, that you don't know that the insurgencies going on in the north is capital, it's geared towards the agenda of seeing to it that stuffs are being gotten out of that particular part of the world? You want to tell me you don't know the illegal minings going down there? The emirs up the north, they want to tell me they don't know. The governors in places that have mineral resources, they want to tell me they don't know what they want to tell me they don't know what they are doing. You want to tell me you don't know what's happening in the mines? You want to tell me you guys don't know how terrorists get to move in and out of the north? You want to tell me our soldiers back in the days that get to go to Liberia, that get to go to different places of peacekeeping, don't know what to do? You want to tell me that you don't know all of these things? You want to tell me that the number of people that die in that country every day don't touch you? You want to tell me that you are comfortable building soaring fences and putting electric fences and the likes of that, and you don't want to really look at the problems in the country? Do you want to tell me categorically that you don't know that we're a laughing stock now, even amongst our African brothers? The largest black nation, the so-called giant of Africa that should ordinarily cough, and all of Africa go to sleep. You want to tell me you don't know these things? You want to tell me you are comfortable starching wealth, not wealth, starching money in banks abroad, and these banks abroad get to use them to build their countries and borrow money and lend money to as many persons that want to do so? You want to tell me that if these monies are being invested back home, we are not going to get a better country? You want to tell me that as leaders, you guys have led so well? Bayo Nonuga, Reno Mokri, you guys that get to stay here and talk so stupidly and so annoyingly and as daft as a philosophical argument or a logical reasoning can be, you want to tell me you don't see what we as a people are going through? What are you telling me, guys? Are we a joke in the 21st century that people get to think of crossing the Sahara, the Mediterranean? Every day people leave the country. You want to tell me that the same way people are treated in the embassies in Nigeria is the same way they get treated abroad? Because desperate times would create desperate measures. Most embassies in Nigeria are either corrupt, arrogant, or there for selfish reasons. And I'm not saying this out of speculation. I know a whole lot of persons still back home recently trying to get out of the country that have gained admission but cannot leave because embassies are having crazy rules, because people leave and almost don't want to come back. Who wants to come back? Dear leaders in government, you are driving people out of the country. People are leaving Nigeria that are ordinarily supposed to be there. Nurses, doctors, teachers, philosophers, you name it. People are leaving to better places. places that their craft and their skills get accepted, places that they get value, and sometimes even on scholarship. They get to leave and then they now have to live a double life, thinking between home and thinking back. Because you get to receive calls from two sides of the world and you get to make double friends and you get to meet new people and part ways with old. You have to change food, you have to change dress code, you have to begin to think about winter, summer, and the likes of the things you ordinarily don't think about if you're in a place like Nigeria, save for those in places like South Africa and Cape Verde and you name it down the other side and that get to feel this particular way. But beyond this, I ask myself, at what point are we going to really begin to look at what we are supposed to look at? At what point are we going to start telling ourselves that we've suffered enough? It reminds me of the poem by Decay. Decay says, "Today I saw a mysterious thing, a thing that vexed me to my very soul. I saw the black man dressed like a king, but crouching in the shadows with a begging bowl. His children were starving in fields of cassava, dying of diseases the palm kernel could cure. Homeless in a land of rock and timber. Why are you here?" He said, "I am poor. Today I saw a mysterious thing, a wonder so great I cannot tell it. Saw the black man dressed like a king. He was lying in the dust crying at my feet. His legs were sturdy like the Iroko, his muscles they ripple like the proud Zambezi. His forests were rich and teeming with games. I told him, 'Get up,' but he said, 'I am lame.' Today I saw a mysterious thing, so shocking I have no words to say. I saw the black man dressed like a king, but he was standing like the lost by the highway. He stood on clamps, but they had no weight. He was in a cage that had no gate. He could see where the keys to his chains were kept. Why are you here?' He said, 'I am trapped. Today I saw a mysterious thing. Oh, how can I tell such a horrible story? I saw the black man dressed like a king, but he was sharing a sleeping mat with poverty. His poverty was a fat man with a bulging stomach, lying on his back beside a pot full of treasures. This reality Decay maintains is all that he seemed to lack, that he could get up and remake his own future." In the poem we just listened to, we get to see what Decay was trying to do there. And it's indeed the reality we get to find ourselves in. For how can a man dress like a king but crouching in the shadows with a begging bowl? How can a man dress like a king, homeless in a land full of rock and timbers? How can a man be lame when his muscles ripple like the proud Zambezi and his legs are sturdy like the Iroko? How can he be trapped in a cage that had no gate and standing on clamps that had no weight? How can a man be so-called a king, yet lying beside a pot, yet lying beside poverty with a bulging stomach? How can he do all of these stuffs and it's still to be said that he's a king? But that's the reality we are facing at the moment. That's the reality we as a people now have to face as a continent. I tell you, without fear or favor, without shame, against all pride and prejudice, that the average Nigerian is living below the benchmark of where he or she was ordinarily supposed to be living. And it's nothing to be proud of. It's nothing to be proud of. We live in the 21st century. We're an industrious people. We're supposed to be happy people. The politicians have gotten down into our issues, have used what has kept us apart to really, really keep us apart. It has used tribalism. It has used a different form of ethnicity and held us down. So that even when the so-called enslavers came, villages across heard that the other village is being attacked. And because we were not so united, we allowed our brothers across the shore to be enslaved, to be bought as slaves. It has not changed yet. It has not changed today. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. So that, like DK Chukwumeje will postulate, if Oyo has stood by its neighbors and vice versa, we wouldn't have had colonialism that easy. We wouldn't have had the enslavement of our brothers and sisters that easy, but we didn't do that. Our colonizers are still very much around. Their colors, if they are colors, have just changed. Our brothers and sisters are the new sheriffs in town. The Jim Crows of our time. England, Portugal, Belgium, Japan. They're the new guys down here now. They're representing these old guys. From the king of Belgium, the so-called Leopold III, and what he did in Congo, or what Portugal and Belgium jointly did that led to the Rwandan genocide. You name it, or the assassination of the likes of Patrice Lumumba and the likes of that. Our brothers are the ones taking over such. There's money in the country. I won't dare to deny that there's money in Nigeria. If you go to most of these Scandinavian countries, you get to go put up as students and as workers looking for means of getting your livelihood, and the new idea of enslavement and doing jobs you don't like because it pays you money you actually need and to support your family back home. These places are very, very tiny countries. Ordinarily, some of them will pass as states. More so, Israel is like Israel is smaller than Cross River. As a country, Israel is smaller than a state in Nigeria, Cross River, in terms of landmass and the likes of that. We don't want to talk about places like Malta. We don't want to talk about places like the Netherlands. We don't even want to talk about places like Poland or Belgium and you name it. I'm not saying we being that vast is a direct, all I said, proportion to the fact that we ordinarily we just get things done our way. It is one thing to have that vast amount of land as we have back home, and it's another thing also not really doing with it what we ordinarily supposed to do. Our farming system have to change. We have to grow. Our scientists back in school have to be cleansed from corruption and actually be given things to do, and they have to do them right. Our lecturers have to teach well. Our teachers have to be there for the students and the pupils. Our police officers have to do their job diligently. Soldiers stay in the barracks and guard the territorial borders of the country and stay away from the affairs of the country. As is the case currently, that the soldiers are almost everywhere. Politicians, do your job. Students, be students. Parents, be parents. Those who want to remain single, stay so. Those of other orientations, they also have to be given the necessary human right that ought to be accorded to them, before delving into philosophical arguments as to what is right and what is not right in terms of sexual orientation or levels of attractiveness and the likes of that. Religious organizations have to come to terms with recognizing the fact that we are all humans beyond the color of our skins, beyond the orientations we get to have in terms of religious beliefs and the likes of that. Without these, we are heading nowhere. Roads have to be built across communities, not one community against the other. Different states and different regions must be allowed to develop at their pace. If we don't want to return back to the regional system of governance, if we must keep the states as they are, greed must not be the thing at the forefront. A politician upon whom responsibilities that his office warrants on him has been given should not come and tell us how difficult it is to be in his position. He asks to be made president. He asks to be elected as a governor. He asks to be elected as a senator. He asks to be elected as a local government chairman and the likes of that. And even the ministers that get appointed, they all saw to it that I think I can manage this office, and I think I can serve the people. And then they accepted the fact that there can be these things, and it was given down to them, and they shouldn't come and tell us these things. We don't want to hear them. We place them there for a singular reason: to serve the people, to do the same things dear brothers and sisters across the world are doing. Countries are corrupt, no troubles. Countries in the West are also corrupt. That's not a thing. That's not a thing too far. It's a thing the near. But what do you do with what do you do with what do you do with a country whose leaders don't even seek the interests of its people? What do you do with a country whose leaders are not patriotic to their people? Why do I say this, and why do I say so? I say so for a whole lot of reasons. We don't put the interests of the Nigerian people first. And sometimes that is why even the guys up the north, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, are almost cutting off ties with that image as being Africans, because they really, really want to develop. Are the countries and their history far from perfect? Yes, of course. So as almost all parts of the world, not almost all parts of the world have experienced levels of violence. The world has not really been a peaceful thing. We keep on telling ourselves about the idea of peace, peace, peace in the world. The world have really not been peaceful. There have been serious fightings here and there. The Huns have been there. The gods have been there. The Turks have fought on their own levels. The Germans, Africans themselves, the Indians, you name it. There have been wars across centuries and epochs. And now we are saying, with the idea of being cosmopolitan as we are becoming currently, we can make efforts. We can see to it that there's peace in the world. We can see to it that we make sense of our existence down here. And until we do that, we labor in vain. And until we do that, we risk a whole lot. Until we do that, we will continue to deceive ourselves that we are good people, just punished by God. We ought to kick against war. We ought to kick against everything that divides us. For crying out loud, we import matches. We import toothpicks. We import almost everything into the country. And you want the currency to be strong. The paper mills are dying. The ones that are left behind are funded one way or the other from monies coming from outside. There's a dearth of industry back home. The farms don't receive tractors. They don't receive fertilizers as they should. The roads are inferior. The gutters are on their own. The police officers are corrupt, arrogant, and a whole lot. A great chunk of them. The few who are trying to do what they ought to do are being swallowed within the noise that is corruption. One day we'll talk about corruption. But we all know corruption in Nigeria as that popular definition. Corruption is a cankerworm that has eaten deep into the fabrics of the Nigerian society. Is a very, very common phrase we get to use. But indeed, what is corruption? Corruption is your uncle. Corruption is my auntie. Corruption is your cousin. Corruption is my brother. Corruption is your sister. Corruption is my father. Corruption is your auntie. Corruption is your friend. Corruption is my friend. Going into public offices and private sectors and actually living against the tenets that see to it that ethics has a say, that see to it that our world becomes better, that see to it that indeed we can make efforts as a people. Corruption is me and you failing to do what we ought to do to see to it that the country moves forward. Corruption is we kicking against discipline. Corruption is we wanting to skip our children classes, not because they are necessarily intelligent, but because we want them to be out of school. Corruption is WAEC being tolerant of malpractice. Corruption is the WAEC examination being so corrupt. Not the exams itself, but the centers that these exams are written. Corruption is students gaining admission are not allowed to study, not given the necessary tools and research materials to study. Their universities have no access to JSTOR, their universities have no access to ResearchGate, their universities have no access to online materials, their universities have no access to computers, to electricity, to basic amenities, to classrooms that will see to it that lecturers get to communicate and have time for students. Corruption is universities not having office hours for their lecturers to meet one-on-one with their confused students and students who want to forge ahead. Corruption is Nigerian universities demanding exorbitant amount of money for transcripts. Corruption is those students not getting the transcripts on time to see to it that they send to their schools and gain admissions. Corruption is the embassies in African countries making slave of the people and making jest of the whole idea of getting visas. Corruption is embassy staffs becoming demigods, making it difficult for people to migrate out. Corruption is government officials not actually sitting down and telling themselves, we are here to serve, not to be served. We are here for a reason, and for that reason is to serve the people. That reason is to do what we ought to do as a nation, as a body, for the good of our people, within ethical frameworks, within the guidelines that lead to goodness, the guidelines that lead to virtue. Doing good both in the night and in the light. Never doing wrong just to belong. And the likes of this. Corruption is our church leaders, our religious men and women across divides and the likes of that being insincere with the search for truth and the search for the omnipotence and the search into the divine, plowing this uncharted cause and getting to ask questions that are ordinarily supposed to be asked. Corruptions are religious leaders extorting the poor masses and asking them for money. Corruption is our religious leaders getting involved with politicians, frolicking with the bad guys and coming to tell the people their problems are spiritual more than physical. Corruption is looking at Nigerians and Africans in the eye as it looks across Europe, as it looks in the Americas, as it looks in different parts of the world, in China. Even as Ukraine fights, there's corruption going down there. Even as Palestine burns down, there's still corruption going down there. Corruption is you paying bribe to get a job, needing a letter from a senator to get a job. Corruption is bribing your way through universities. Corruption is you not wanting to pay the price. Corruption is we being too weak to tell ourselves we are corrupt. It shows that we've corrupted our system and corrupted our mind. Corruption is the events that get to see to it that mothers die in childbirth and children die before age 5. And there are those across the other side called Amajiris who want to go to school, who go to school if they are given the opportunity and do exceedingly well. But who don't, because their people have kept them that way. Corruption is seeing a child who can become like Dangote, speak English as clear as Dan Bello, kept under the sun begging for money in the name of a stupid system that ordinarily shouldn't have anything or any tie to do with Islam. The Amajiri system in Nigeria is fucking kids up and it's making them useless. They beg from when they are born till when they get old. Their psychologies are messed up. They don't go to school. They don't. Corruption is not having schools. Corruption is not having hospitals. Corruption is not having the basic amenities necessary for a country to function. Corruption is bad road. Corruption is the presidency at the moment being so shady. Corruption is when journalists who expose the truth are called corrupt, rather than the people who indeed are corrupt. You get to see corruption when milk get rationed. Corruption is seen when more than 80% of Nigerians have not in their lifetime drank liquid milk. They take milk powdered for those who actually take them. As though we are in war times, as though we are still fighting a war. Because it is in such time that such amount of milk get to be so easy to find and to get. Oh no, corruption. Corruption is you just sitting down there saying nothing in the face of evil. And I know your fear, I know your pain. But we have to move on as a people. We have to grow, we have to progress, we have to elect good leaders. We have to see to it that we work together. We work together as a people. We work together as a country. We see to it that life gets to go on well as a people. We can do better. It's not too late. We have entered the wrong train, or we have entered a train that has taken us beyond our stop. And we are heading to doom. The next right thing to do is to get out of such train and get into the next one that leads back to our destination. The last time to do a good deed has passed. The next time to do a good deed is indeed now. And until we do that, we labor in vain. Until we do that, we labor in the choices we get to make, in the wrong choices we get to make as a people. I want my sisters and my brothers to give birth to kids in a country that functions well. I ordinarily don't want them to relocate to stay abroad for too long. I want them to go back to the country and enjoy their God-given land. I want them to eat a ruru. I want them to eat ofe nsala. I want them to take ewedu. I want them to do all of these things. I want my friends who will not have the opportunities to get to leave the country to get at least the best in the country itself. It's doable. It's not something that is not doable. It's not something that cannot be done. It's something that can be done. It's something that should be given priority. I want schools to work. I want universities to produce graduates that will solve problems. I want artists to be artists, and lawyers to be lawyers, and doctors to be doctors, and engineers to be engineers, and not all these people working in the bank. Because you see that a whole lot in Nigeria. You see lawyers, you see engineers all filing to get jobs in banks. You see students graduating without even knowing what to do. I don't talk about a lot of things with my friends, especially those still in school back in Nigeria, for a whole lot of reasons. One, I try to ask myself, how do they still go to church, pray to God, and for Catholics, go for confessions, and yet are under duress to get to bribe their way through school, which is almost like a 90% stuff that gets to happen, bribe their way through school and 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 still maintain their sanity. Because explain and tell me how a father, a mother really feels actually paying a child's school fees to see that the child goes to school. But then that child comes back home or calls from school and say, Mommy, Daddy, Papa, Mama, Baba, Mama. They don't ask us to pay bribe. They don't ask us to pay money to lecturers so that we go fit pass course. Course where lecturer no come class, come teach us. Course where lecturer no teach us at all. But the lecturer, they ask us more pay money. So that go fit pass us for waiting and don't pay and first in the first place. So that we will fit come pass. And yet, such people cannot be employed. If we are to stick by what most Nigerians get taught in school, they won't be employable as the employment market gets to ask. Just that the Nigerian is ingenuine. He has a whole lot of ingenuity in him that gets to see to it that he strives in wheresoever he finds himself. Nigerians produced bombs during the war. Nigerians fought in the Second World War. Nigerians contributed greatly. And they weren't weak people. They did a whole lot of stuff down there. Nigerians produced the almighty Ogbunigwe. You might want to call them Biafrans because they were indeed Biafrans at the time, and most of them even now. Nigerians produced a whole lot of stuff that saw to it that the war lasted that long from the Biafran end. And yet, after the war, everything just went silent as though nothing happened. Meanwhile, the Germans, who got to experiment with a whole lot of inhumane, scientific, and unethical approaches to science, got shipped to America and a whole lot of other strong war power now to get to use such research to get to better the lives and the economy of those people. I'm not here advocating for unethical ways of doing things, but I'm just saying Nigeria can be better. Nigerians are not stupid people. If you're a Nigerian leader and you go to bed sleeping well in the face of this current aridity, in the face of this disenchantment, and in the face of this large-scale suffering, hunger, weaponization of poverty, and all what not, then I tell you for free, and I tell you and take this to the bank, you are wicked, you selfish, you heartless, you are ignorant, you are villain, and you are despicable. If you're a contractor and you produce inferior roads, you are despicable. If you're a politician and you embezzle funds and you are dead in logical reasonings and the likes of that, you are despicable, and I don't know. And so in the final analysis, for whom does this bell toll? It tolls for all of us. We must come together. We must harness our God-given talents and opportunities as Nigerians to get to see that we get the best out of our times and hand over a future which we have already stolen from our young ones. A future of peace, a future of hope, a future secure, sound, a future of a whole lot of other things than what we now have. It is something we can do. It is something we ought to do. It is something we must do. Else, we labor in vain. Else, we kill ourselves. My name is Biringkpa bin Emeka, and this is Boring Conversations.